All right, here we go. All right. Hey, everyone, it's Georgia. And today I am here with a very special guest, another special guest. This is George Summers, and I will let him tell you a little bit about himself.
Right. So my name's George. I'm a director of stop-motion films for festivals and fun. And yeah, and my brand is it's called Studio Suzo, and right now that's just me. but yeah, I got big plans to branch out and make more films, and yeah, it's just all about the storytelling, really, wherever that ends up in the future.
Awesome. So, of course, I have to start with the most important question, which is, what are some of your favorite animated films?
Oh God. Wasn't ready for that. Oh, good Lord. I mean, it's hard not to immediately name like most Studio Ghibli films.
Of course.
It just kind of speaks for itself. I will say my favorite film, period, is actually Only Yesterday, which is one of Isao Takahata's films. And what are some non-Ghibli films I love? It's also biased, like Fantastic Mr. Fox, Coraline, any stop-motion film. And the early Pixar films are just untouchable. Like Toy Story is the perfect film. Nothing's as good as Toy Story.
Right. So how did you get started in filmmaking?
Well, it was actually a really long time ago. I think it was just me and my family had a VHS camcorder, and we just thought it'd be funny. I must have been about 7 when we did that for the first time. We just thought it'd be funny to make our own little action film in the living room. And it all just kind of became a very casual hobby pretty much that early and never went away. And it was just making terrible home movies for years and years and years. But I guess it was around college, because I did a lot of animation that time as well. Mm-hmm. And that was a lot of stop motion because that's just so accessible. And I loved Lego and Star Wars. That obviously was a vehicle for that outlet. But it was around college that I got the chance to do some animation for education, which I hadn't been able to do before that point. And it was because I was doing it for a project, you kind of have no choice but to finish it. So that was the first time I made something that I saw the outcome and I sort of put all the work in designing it because you have no choice, which kind of forced me into taking it seriously. And I got to see the result of that. I was like, oh, I actually have quite an affinity for this. And then, yeah, I think it was that same year I made my first festival short. And that's pretty much the cutoff point of terrible home movies and taking it quite seriously. But it was all about animation from that point. And other than very success in the films I've made since then, nothing's really changed from that sensibility. It's just I'm just making it in my own space on my own terms. For like, if it's for education or not, it doesn't really feel like it makes a difference. It's just an excuse to have the time to make it. If I can hand it into uni, it's all the same. It's just kind of, yeah, a lot of what I call duct tape filmmaking, just on your own desk with what you have lying around. It's probably going to stay that way for a while.
No worries. So I was going to ask, so it seems like it was around college when you decided that stop motion was your go-to medium.
Yeah.
Okay. So why, what do you like about it versus live action? Because it's definitely, it's definitely, I mean, each one has its own challenges. Live action has its, and then animation has its own. But yeah, why do you choose stop motion?
It's a really good question. I'm trying to think of how to answer it simply. Because I mean, for me, it's like, I mean, what I care about a lot, like above all the mediums, is the storytelling. But stop motion is just such a unique vehicle for the kinds of stories you can tell, because it's animated, so you can do animation is unlimited. You can do whatever you want with it because it can all be stylized and you build everything from the ground up. But stop motion has the unique quality of it also being real, which is just like, to me, it's just like the perfect crossover, because I love photography and like hands-on filmmaking, but then not being limited by real world resources. And just, I mean, that's something else that excites me about stop motion. It's just that seems like stop motion should be it. You can do anything, yet it seems like such an unturned stone of the kinds of films that come out for it. And I'm just sitting thinking, like, why aren't there more? Well, probably because it's horribly tedious. No one wants to do that. But yeah, I mean, I think just the fact that I'd had done so much stop motion, but had made live action films as well growing up, that it just sort of, like, I never watched Nightmare Before Christmas or something and then thought like, oh, I want to make creepy stop motion films like that. Then that would just sort of, it was literally just, I just sort of fell into it because I just had so many ideas that worked in stop motion. And I think it just excites me the most, really. I think as I work with other people, I'll likely branch out to other mediums. I'm actually doing a 2D film at the moment, but well, 2D, like a sort of semi 2D, semi paper cutout stop motion, but the emphasis would not be on, isn't on like models. So it's still closer to the 2D medium. And I am collaborating with a storyboard artist for that as well, which is really great. And but it's, yeah, I mean, it's just the most exciting, really. It just, I feel like I have the most to offer that, because there's just so much you can do with it that hasn't been done before.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned something that I was going to ask later, which was, I've heard that I guess someone told me, like at Leica Studios, that they have had during production people just run out screaming because of how tedious it is. I was going to ask, how do you keep from doing that?
So just before I answer that, to be clear, you mean an animator at Leica just ran outside and had a breakdown?
Yeah, animators and probably assistants as well, having to help with the animation.
Oh my God. I mean, I don't think I've ever reached that point when animating, because it's just, I mean, I guess that like, I'm not, it might sound like a complete contradiction, but I'm not much of a character animator. Like I don't want to waste hours, not waste is the word, but use so many hours like learning perfect human-like movement, because that's so secondary to writing and things, that's sort of what I've always focused on. And I've always written stories that kind of don't demand too much animation. Like my last film, Out with the Old, was specifically inspired by old British TV shows that have really choppy kids movements, and other films like The Wizard in the Woods, he doesn't have legs. The robot just is a robot. So I'm always working around that. So I don't think I've ever had a shoot where I've just been like, I've been animating this for 40 years. And what do I do? But I think the worst moment I've had is actually the opening shot of Boba Fans, where it pans through the cantina and there's lots of characters moving, and R2-D2 comes in, and there's just so many things happening at once. And that was really early as well. I think I shot that in 2015, but I can't remember what happened, but a light got knocked or something, and the shot was meant to end up on Boba and his stormtrooper friend. But obviously it cuts a lot sooner than that, and then there's just some other shot to establish they're there. But it's just like, we're doing this for 30 hours and I got that close. And that's probably the biggest moment I've had, just like, do I even make the film? Can I recover from that?
Yeah. I believe it. Definitely. So why did you choose the name Studio Suzo?
I wish the answer was more exciting. I basically just went and like I wanted a made up word basically, but I couldn't think of anything that didn't sound really dumb. So I wanted to prompt myself by getting words translated into other languages and then just like swapping out a vowel or so. And I can't even fully remember now. I'm pretty sure the Japanese word for create is sozo. And I just swapped out a word, a vowel. But that might not even be true. I hope if there's anyone who speaks Japanese listening, I'm really sorry. Just tell me. Yeah. But yeah. So, well, yeah. That's all it is really. I just wanted something, a word people that would ring a bell.
Definitely. Yeah, that's no problem. Like I know I'm thinking in terms of naming characters and things, but usually we tend to you want to overthink the name, but really you can come up with any name. But once you like in your case, you've established a brand and you've created so much work that the name just feels natural. You don't think about it afterwards, for people at least.
Oh, thank you. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Like I honestly do sometimes think like, do people even know what this is? Do I just call it something like Movie Boy Studios? Who knows?
Yeah, well, I think like even that probably would work because you just I don't know. I think of it in terms of, for example, book characters, like I guess Harry or Percy Jackson. They're actually silly kind of sounding names, but because those book series are so well done and the characters are cool, you just like them. You don't mind it anymore.
Yeah, that's actually a really, really good point. I never really thought of that. Because Harry Potter is not a great sounding name. But that's one expensive name now.
Yeah. Or Neville Longbottom. Like it's silly when you first hear it, but now you're just used to it.
Yeah, for sure.
So Boba Fans wasn't your first project. It's your most well known, but my question is, why do you prefer to make your own figures instead of just using Legos or pre-made objects?
I guess it's just to do with design, really. I mean, when you make a story, you should reverse engineer everything around that. Your characters should be designed around the personalities they need, and everything should be designed around your story. And so that by default pretty much always means that you're going to need to make everything yourself. Mm-hmm. And I mean, there's a gradient to that. Like I made a film a while ago about a robot, and because it's a robot, I just glued some DVD parts together, and I didn't think much about what do the shapes of this robot connote. I was just like, it's a robot. but on the complete other end of the spectrum, I thought, wouldn't it be funny if you made a film about Boba Fett where he was just some guy sat in a cafe and got really mad, but then you completely bypass the design phase because those characters exist and Lego is such an ideal medium for that. Yeah, so it really just depends what story you're trying to tell and if you need to design for it or you can use things around you. There's some great short films about where people have just used resources that make me kick myself a bit. I'm just like, that's so good. And they got to start right away.
Nice. What, so with The Old, which is one of your more recent films, and it's currently doing a very successful festival run. What were the characters made out of? And yeah, how long did it take you to put that together? The characters.
Yeah, so the characters are made, the doll is called, well, I'll introduce it for those who don't know. Out with the Old is is my graduate short film, and it's just about a really tidy, uptight doll who lives in a dollhouse. But then the family move house, and he gets thrown out, and then has to travel across the world to try to find it. But it's it's got that doll character called Alfred, and then a little companion who's a tiny little stuffed elephant called P. And they both have ball and socket armatures in them, which was, I think I'm really lucky there, because my dad is a carpenter and my grandpa is a metal worker, and I explained that I needed, for some reason, the market's so different now. Back in 2015, when I started thinking about this film, you really couldn't get very compact armatures for small puppets.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, now you can, but at the time, I explained this to my dad, and we basically made our own. We designed an armature to be in that scale that can be adjusted. And I mean, a lot more credit to them than me. I just sort of told them what I needed it to do, and then they did their magic. But yeah, so I feel really lucky to have that resource. And so yeah, they've got armatures in them, but that's really the only clever thing going on. Because the doll is just, it's got beads for hands, is wrapped in cloth and then sewed up to look a bit more like a shirt, and then a wooden head, and that's all that's going on there. And then the elephant is literally a tea-stained sock, cut up, sewed into shape, and then stuffed with fluff. And then actually P was probably harder, because there was, his head is foam, but has a lot of different things going on. There's like a wire trunk coming out, which is also stuffed and sewn, and there's like wire mesh for the ears, and it's got like fake leather sewed onto it, so it looks like a hat. I think that was like, I think Alfred only took, the armatures took a while, but once I started fabricating them, Alfred took about a week.
Okay.
That was so simple. And then P, I think the stuffing of the body probably took about 2 weeks. And then that head, about a month. Just trying to get that right. There were also these, he had this magnetic strip above his little eye holes. And so then I cut out lots of magnetic eyebrows, so he can just sort of, which is the only thing he has to express himself other than the shape of his ears, but just his eyebrows literally just going like angry, sad, and somehow trying to make that look happy is really challenging. It's like, isn't he just upset? But yeah, I mean, I'm certainly not much of a puppet maker. I think you'd have a much more interesting answer from someone who really knew what they were doing. But I do find it really fun too. I mean, like I was saying before, it's designing for your story. So when you see that come to life, it's just like, you feel like you know them.
Definitely. Well, I mean, I just hearing this is fascinating to me, because you're definitely a better puppet maker than I am, which isn't saying much, but you are definitely, but also it's like a testament to being that creative when working by yourself and working independently. And so I think it's cool.
Thank you.
So yeah, speaking more a little bit about Out with the Old, I got a chance to watch it. And what was interesting for me was that it wasn't just stop motion. There was a mix of live action in there. And I mean, yeah, kind of what was the choice going into that? I like it as a stylistic choice, because normally I think that stop motion should just be, every single thing is frame by frame by frame, a picture you took. But then seeing yours with some of the live action and the scenery at night, I don't know, I was like, oh, that's just cool, a neat stylistic change than what I'm used to seeing.
It's yeah, I mean, it was probably more of a technical choice than I mean, I really had a long think at the beginning about how that would look and if that would be weird. But what pushed me into wanting to do it is, again, I don't know how many non-British viewers will know what I'm talking about, but actually, it's also the same as things like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and like the really old, super jerky stop motion films, where like they will just have little segments in them where the camera just moves on its own in like live action whilst everything's static, just because it's easier. But part of the storytelling motif was that Alfred is like a vintage doll in like a, and then at the beginning the aspect ratio is kind of smaller and there's a bit of film grain and it's sort of almost like he's in an old stop motion setting, but then he's thrown into the modern world. So it's just a little bit of a visual shorthand for his comfort zone is gone. And then I thought that borrowing that live action thing would make my life so much easier, but also kind of not be too jarring because it's in that context. But the main technical reason, that being the stylistic one, is that it's a film about two stop motion characters going outside. You can't animate outside. So I just laboriously storyboarded it in a crafty enough way that anytime they need to move, it can be a shot close enough to achieve indoors, and then anytime you need a wider space, the characters don't have to move, so the camera can just pan above them as they're looking, and then hopefully at no point do they look like they've just like died, because it's live action now. But there are a few things like that that have to be done, like there are a lot of animated bits where there's a moving background, but they have to be outside. What I actually did was I shot live action footage and then animated them in front of a monitor, and then just moved the frame along one at a time.
Okay.
Which was like a living nightmare to try and achieve, to be honest. But I mean, I actually stole it from The Mandalorian, which is obviously a whole different thing, but they just, because they had a lower budget on a TV show, they had this giant LED screen stage, and they could render all their backgrounds real time and it liked them, and they just acted in front of it. I just thought, so you don't have to green screen everything, and they're lit. Everything's just there. It's like, why don't I just go film what I want and just have it sat behind them? I mean, it's kind of offensive to set designers, but very kind to my schedule.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, I think it's cool. Like taking inspiration from something other than just other stop motion. That's always a good idea. So in terms of, so you say you're saying a lot of, for example, when writing the characters, that it's based on what the story is, because that's what you focus on first. So when you're writing, I guess for one, where do your ideas come from? And also, what's the most challenging part of writing? The beginning, the middle, or the end? Even though they're short films.
I'm trying to think. It's I feel like it's never the same thing. Sometimes it's as simple as just a little visual that I like the Wizard in the Woods is really just because I was drawing the Ice King in class, and then I just sort of modified it to my own design, and then it was just like a little wizard. I was like, that's neat. And then I was like, and then after my Just Some Morning Tea, I thought I kind of want to make a film with that wizard. And then like sometimes it's as simple as that. Sometimes there isn't a big eureka moment. I'm going to make a film about this. But then other times, like Just Some Morning Tea was the first festival film I did, which was, it's actually got the character from Out with the Old, but he looks very different. It's the same idea. But that film is literally just about a doll in a dollhouse again, but he doesn't leave the dollhouse. He just gets up, makes a cup of tea, and then the house starts shaking, and there's all these shadows moving, and it's sort of like a bit suspenseful. And then finally, the ceiling caves in, and it's like a horror film. But then it's just like a little girl who picks him up, and then just like, yeah. But but like on the other hand, that was like I can't remember what it was. I read this short story in English literature, and I can't remember what it is now, but it was just it was basically about this guy who's trying to cross the border in his car with his wife, but the whole time it turns out that his wife is dead.
Oh no.
And but like then, but I was just like, I just thought about that. Like, that's so good for a short story if it's just like, if you're just led through a situation and then it just turns out to be something totally different. And then I just sort of thought, like, what are some characters in situations that aren't what they seem? And I just wrote a bunch of stuff down, and Doll and Dollhouse came up, and everything just, yeah. And then it just came from there. So sometimes it is quite like reverse engineering, like what's the effect of the story you want, and then you get it. Other times it's cute wizard, and then it comes after. It's definitely not the same every time, but I think since uni, I think my story philosophy is probably quite different, and I always like, now I realize how important it is for like, for the idea to be good, like, because the conflict and all the meat of your story needs to be in the idea. That can't just be like surgically attached to it. Like, the example I always use is Ratatouille, just my template for how to make a film, because you've gone forever about all the things that make the story work, but the only reason any of it works is because someone at Pixar went, let's make a film about a rat in a kitchen. Like, the conflict is in the idea. So everything just comes off of that. You don't need to, you know, if it was about a panda working in a kitchen, it wouldn't be, I mean, apart from the fact that you can't fit a panda in his hat. Like, well, a frog in a kitchen, let's go with that. Like, we don't have the shorthand to understand that it's going to be a problem for the frog, because kitchen staff don't have frog problems, they have rat problems.
Yep.
And like, so, but tailing off that idea, all these things about like, well, why can't a rat be a cook? Like, anyone can be an artist. And the theme just bleeds off that, and the art style bleeds off that, and everything just feeds in that center. And I had that drilled into me at uni, and now I just feel like the idea has to have that weight. I mean, I say that just because I think in the future, if I had like, say, a cute wizard drawing, I probably wouldn't proceed until I had some kind of really good reason to make it, other than I like wizards. But I'm glad I did anyway. But yeah, so I think historically it's been quite random, but these days it's a lot more intense, really, because it feels like the most important bit. Like, everything that comes after it might just be pointless if the idea isn't really good.
Okay. So hopefully I'm not repeating the question, but so yeah, so your ideas, like the way they come from, is it can be different each time. How about your writing process overall, I guess? And that's just in terms of, you know, writing the first draft. Do you have any rituals for yourself for writing and then rewriting?
Yeah, I mean, I have like, I have like a list of rules of things that are more just like, more like psychological pointers, just like to detect when you're hitting a wall, and when like, basically, I mean, if I was giving advice on how to write, just like try to identify all the ways in which you're sabotaging yourself. Like, if you're if you've hit a wall, then you need to sort of identify what the wall is you've hit, because what makes ideas bad and stories bad is if your ideas stopped producing the qualities it needs to, and you've hit this wall of like, where do I go with this? And instead of finding the solution, you sort of surgically attach something to it. Like, you can't figure out what this character does, so then like, there's set up some other character at the beginning who does this thing, and then rather than, it should be like carving a diamond, not like attaching more stuff to it, then you get this big inflated, really not elegant story. And I think that's how I'd characterize all my writing rules. Just like make sure it's not inflating and make sure it's got everything's just flowing naturally. If it isn't natural and you have to like cheat or add something that just makes it worse or seems pointless, then be willing to come in with the wrecking ball and go back a few steps. Or, I mean, sometimes I just have to admit that an idea really just doesn't work, which is, I mean, that's something else as well, that like, you've got to be relatively robust to accept that sometimes your ideas just don't really work. But like, I mean, that's not the best way of saying it, because it's not that ideas are good or bad. It's just what you want them to be might not be what you want them to be. And I mean, it's like Out With the Old was, the reason it was planned over so many years was because Just Some Morning Tea, that initial doll film, was meant to be that going on an adventure outside toy film. But I was 15 and I was trying to do stop motion outdoors. Like, I don't know what I was doing. And I felt so like, no, this is like a C grade version of the film I was going to do. But like, but I'm so glad I didn't just abandon it, because what happened instead was that I distilled it back to the beginning. I was like, okay, you've got this premise. There's a doll in a dollhouse. Like, what can that become instead? And if you're willing to re-engineer your ideas, then you'll find what you're looking for. It just won't be in what you thought it was going to be. Because, and when the time did come to make Out With the Old, the story went through rigorous rewrites and was going to be so long and awful. And I couldn't see it, because you can't see it when you're writing it. You don't know how it's going to turn out. But like, it's only because I was so willing just to like completely start again on so many occasions that like, you just got to have a thick skin and not think too much about like the bits that like, I don't know, I'm going to give really contradictory advice, because your story should excite you, but don't focus too much on the bits that excite you, because you'll lose sight of what your story actually needs to be. And that's how it becomes a mess. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can relate to what you're saying, especially about starting over, because I feel like that happens with me in my writing process, is that I'll try an idea and it's kind of working for a bit and then it just stops and it's not working. So maybe I try to twist up a certain element and then sometimes it's just not going anywhere. So I start all over and then I finally find an idea that I like, and actually pieces of the old idea fit into this new one much easier than the idea. So yeah, starting over is, you don't think about it in the moment, but when you do, or if you like, you trying to explain to someone, it's like, oh wow, it's like so much.
And you realize they don't know what you're talking about. So how is it going to make sense in a film?
So you have Out With the Old going out. You just did Robot Thieves. Is that doing a festival run too?
Yes, it is. It's going. How long has it been going on for? I mean, it's a bit awkward timing really, because I made it pretty immediately after Out With the Old, and then suddenly I had two films that I couldn't wait too long to put into festivals, but I didn't want to overshadow each other. So it has been through festivals, but hopefully we'll move into my spotlight this year, if that makes sense. Cool. And hopefully can get that released onto streaming as well, so people can see it.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the teaser trailer, very quick, but it was fun. So I'm excited to see what the rest of it is. And actually, once you finish a project, any kind, it's a lot of work. And then do you have breaks between? And well, in this case, like you said, sometimes you jump immediately into the next thing, but do you sometimes, do you have breaks in between? And is it weird when the project is finished?
Oh my God, yeah. It's like you've broken up with someone. It's awful, to be honest. Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think of the timeline now, because when I was making films for college, then there were big gaps because each film was essentially just my final project for a semester. So it was only a really small part of, much of sketchbook work and all the stuff you have to do at school, and which goes on for a lot longer. And that meant that, I had just the morning tea in 2015. Then I didn't make The Wizard in the Woods until 2016.
Okay.
And then I didn't make Boba Fans until 2017. And then, though Boba Fans was weird because I shot it, that wasn't for school. So I just shot it in my free time across like 2 years. So that took a long time, but wasn't like hands-on for 2 years. And then, what the hell did I do after that? Well, then uni was kind of, because for my first and second year, I didn't really make any new films. I just had a lot of very brief collaborative projects with people on my course.
Yeah.
And little experiments and storyboard exercise and just what uni should be. It's all the training. And then it was only in third year where it was like, now you've got to make your film. And then I was like, now's my chance. And then that was such a different experience because it wasn't the tail on the end of a school project. It was like, you now have 1 year to make this film, which was such an incredible feeling, but also like being married to someone for a year and then like it's done and then you're just like, oh no, what do I do? And I mean, so this period of time is the most bizarre because I finished uni and I finished Out with the Old in COVID circumstances. So that was really weird. But then immediately after that, I was just like, well, I just want to make something else. And then, because I think the idea for that robot film was just brainstorming things I can achieve with very little. And I just thought, I think I watched Blade Runner and Alien for the first time last year, which is horrible. But but I just like, oh man, I want to do some sci-fi. And I just thought, why don't I just, and I had this ZX Spectrum gathering dust. I thought, what if I spray painted that and turned it around? You have a sci-fi set in like 2 minutes. And everything just came from there. I was like, then you have a robot, and then I tumbled back into a film really quickly. But I mean, immediately after that, I started doing commission work. And I think that was basically the end of any break I've taken since uni. Yeah. I mean, I guess because all the commission-y stuff and jobs I do are quite different, it always feels like a bit of a break because it's something refreshing, which is, I mean, I should really take actual breaks. I recommend breaks to everyone. But yeah, I guess it's just never really been consistent enough for me to even consider how much time to take away from a film, because I essentially usually don't make more than one a year. But I guess the robot film was quite exceptional because it only took like 4 weeks, which is absurd for a stop motion project. It should take far longer. I mean, Out with the Old took several years, and I was like, well, how am I possibly going to start another one? And then it's like done before I blink, which was, yeah. So I guess the short answer is just I really don't want to take any breaks. I just want to keep churning them out as often as I have time to.
Yeah, really. And actually kind of helped me segue into some of my other questions, which is about commissions. Have you just now started getting commissions, or have you gotten them in the past too?
I've had a couple whilst I was in education. I do a lot of motion graphics commissions, but it was only after I graduated that I got chased up a little more often for stop motion stuff. Like I did just like animating some cakes and things for cafes, and I did did a video for a startup golf company with Lego characters, which was really, really fun.
Cool.
And so that kind of thing always seems to turn up and fill the space. I think the most exciting thing going on is, I mentioned earlier, a 2D sort of paper cutout film. Yeah. We were commissioned to do a music video for someone, but I basically just asked if I could also do the story, maybe a little bit. And then, so it kind of slowly became my next big endeavor, I suppose. Like that really, it's the first time since Out with the Old that I've really had my head down and thought, who is this character and what is this story? But I'm not allowed to say anything about it yet.
No, well, definitely let us know when it's out. That sounds cool. Because you've done a cutout animation before. I think I saw it on your site or on your YouTube channel. One of those, I think you did some kind of cutout animation with a fox.
Yes. Yeah. That was the first animation I finished. That was the one in college that I was like, oh, I got it done. I should do another one. Like that's the earliest thing on there. I think that's 2014, which is ages ago now.
Cool. And so if someone wants to hire you for some work, what are some of the first things you discuss with them? First things you got to set up to figure out if it's going to work together. Logistics, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a much easier conversation to have now, because only as of this year do I have my own studio space. So I'm not in this. Yeah, because the first thing I have to say to most people is I can't do it because I have like 30 cubic centimeters to work with. But it was, I mean, like that Lego golf project went through a lot of rewriting of their initial script because they wanted like superheroes flying around and just like, oh jeepers. So, I mean, that's number one. Like, quickly identify the thing they want that can't be done. So, but I mean, I really tried to get involved in not writing for them, but helping them to realize what it is they actually want. Because, like, no matter what your idea is, there's a simple way to do it. Which is why pre-production is so not tedious, just really tiring, because you've got to figure out how to excavate it in the simplest way possible. So with a client, I try to be as stern. I mean, I'm very British in this way. I'm just like, yeah, that sounds nice. But you just got to be as stern as possible and just be like, that is not going to work. How about this? But by really, really, if they didn't get anything out of that, then it would be a waste of both of our time. So I always try to figure out what it is, help them figure out what it is they actually want out of it, so that we can collaboratively achieve something that they didn't know they want, if that makes sense. Because they know what they want it to be, they just don't know what that looks like. Right. But they think they do. So it's like, it's always a difficult conversation. It's like if you're commissioning someone to build a house, and then you're like, no, I pictured the cement going on like this. And the builder's just like, but you don't want it to fall down. It's it's that kind of conversation. But yeah, I mean, there's a very negative light to put in clients. I've never actually worked with anyone who was really unreasonable, and there's always been a really nice joint understanding of some kind of shared goal that actually interests me. But yeah, I mean, that's basically it.
For any advice or tips you would give to people who want to do commissions or do freelance work about negotiating their price, because that's always an awkward thing, especially if you're starting out. Any just tips that you would recommend?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a difficult one because I don't think my track record is excellent in terms of what I'm willing to accept.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think you've really just got to judge what you're going to get out of it, because if you're almost definitely going to be underpaid by someone. But if you need a bit of, I would recommend it if you really need some industry experience and just as long as it doesn't take like a year of your life and you only get like $50, like don't do that, because then you have nothing. But like, I would only compromise with them if that really if you really learn a lot from being able to work with a client. But on the other hand, if you can only afford to work for the time they can actually cover, there's no nonsense involved, you have a budget and they need to meet it, then I really don't think there's anything wrong with just being as upfront as possible and saying, this is my rate, this is what I can do in this amount of time, and this money covers said time. And then if they have an issue, you can then go, okay, well, we can simple it down to this, and then I can meet that budget. And you just you really have to keep the ball in your court, because if they say we can only pay you this, that shouldn't mean you go, fine, I'll do the same work for that money. It should be, you should find ways to go, well, I can do this much simpler version for that money, but it will still achieve what you want. It's just, you really got to, I mean, you are negotiating, but you're not trying to haggle. You're trying to present whole new directions that just completely meet what you both want, rather than anyone, because no one should lose out there. Hopefully what you get out of it is you make something that they actually like, and they actually pay you the money that covers the time it actually took you to make.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have to, I mean, sometimes you compromise, but there's pretty much always a way.
Yeah, that's something I've learned recently too, is a kind of interesting trick is that say a person wants this much done, you kind of give them different tiers or different options. So option 1 is the cheapest. If you want it fast and cheaply done, this is what I can do. If you go with option 2, it'll take longer. I can do this, this, and this in this amount of time, whatever their constraints are, and you can give them 3 different options to choose from.
Yeah, no, that's a really good idea, actually, because then you can't make it any more clear than these are your options. You may pick one or go home.
Right. Door 1, door number 2, door number 3. So I had to ask. Oh, did I already ask that? So I guess you're working on commissions now. Any upcoming any ideas doing in your head for future projects yet, or are you just taking a break from that to focus on commissions?
I'm definitely writing a lot. I've definitely got lots of ideas popping up, but my immediate thoughts are that they're all way too scrambled to sound like anything. Like, one of them's about, so far it's literally just about a dragon trying to blow out its birthday candles, and it can't because it lights them again. Like, that level of, there's your conflict, there's your idea, but I don't know what that is yet. But definitely a lot of things so I'm really, really trying to use this time to do, now that I'm doing a lot of commissions, and that's kind of the hands-on stuff I'm doing during the day, is write stuff that I can pursue funding for and get a crew for, and like make more serious projects where we have a budget that can cover the time to make it. But to get funding for scripts, I hear they have to be good. So I'm just trying to put a lot of time into that, rather than not the the cute wizard approach won't do when you're pitching to like the BFI. You need to have a story.
Sure. Oh, what did I want to ask? I don't know. Is there anything specific you hope people get from your story? Not from your films. Anything you want, because your stories could easily just be for children, but I enjoy them a lot, and I think any age can enjoy them. But is there anything you want people to walk away with from your films? Feelings or messages?
That's a really good question, because I should really know, or else why am I here? But I like, I don't know. Like, see, I feel like I know, but I just don't really know how to describe it. It's like just like a feeling of when you watch like Spirited Away, like what's the word for how that makes you feel? Like they're really just like wonder, just like you've gone away somewhere, like just like it's magic. I want people to feel like they've experienced some magic. And more specifically, I definitely do want themes and messages and ideas that make people think about themselves as well. Like I want to, I just definitely want to make the stories to have an impact on people. And and you're totally right as well, that my target audience is definitely children. But what I'm hoping, like you say, is that, I mean, I hate to just immediately compare the kind of things I'm trying to make to like Pixar or Ghibli, because that's just like the go-to good animated film studio. But there's a really good reason their philosophy on the stories they tell is that they are for children, but the sort of themes and ideas behind the characters are so grounded in something real and like some kind of message that because of that, it immediately becomes for everyone. And that's like, a less obvious example is, oh my God, I can't remember the way their surnames go around. Phil Lord and Chris Miller? Was it Phil Miller? Chris Lord?
Oh, Lord Miller, yeah.
But like the Lego movie, it is a film about plastic bricks. That is for children. However, it's also a film about capitalism and not letting your identity get swept away. Like that's brilliant. That's for everyone. And it achieves, like it has its target, but all that creativity is, again, it's fueled by that idea. It's like, what if a Lego man was just the same as everyone else? And like everything just bleeds off that and it just becomes for everyone just by being about something. Like it's about, films like that are about something human. And so the target audience becomes humans. If your film's about something superficial and it's just trying to reach its target audience, it'll pretty much only reach that and then maybe not even be that memorable. But absolutely what I want people to get out of it is just to be impacted in any way, just to be able to like reflect on themselves, have a feeling of wonder. And I think I focus on a kid's audience as well, because it just is so freeing to not have to take the premise too seriously. You can just completely go to town. And I mean, on the other hand, I've really enjoyed the trend this decade of more adult animated stuff that doesn't feel the need to be too boring just to be adult. Like, I mean, Rick and Morty, for the lack of a better example, is crazy, but it's for adults. And I like there's no restriction there. That just sort of better confirms that animation is for everyone.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just want people to just be moved and remember them.
Yeah, definitely. I think you just articulated something I'd been thinking about, because that I've been thinking about, especially this week, gearing up for this interview, is that Yeah, the frustration, especially if you're an animation fan, is that people just think it's for kids, but they don't realize the people, the creatives, that the thought that's going into it is the inspirations and the creativity is more mature. Like people, okay, so I did an interview with a guy who did a Digimon fan film, and for the show Digimon in one season, it's a kid show, but the creator, the guy leading the project, was inspired by H.P. Lovecraft stuff. So I
Yeah.
love, yeah. So I like what you say about, it being grounded in real things, and yeah, the medium is so much more sophisticated than people think. I think, and
Yeah.
that's the one part about all behind the scenes of animation.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a really interesting thing you bring up as well, like the guy making like a fan film for Digimon, but inspired by something a lot more. I don't know what the word is that makes it that isn't detrimental to Digimon. Like H.P. Lovecraft is quite renowned by adults.
Yeah,
It's high art.
exactly. Yeah, high art. People differentiate, but they don't realize the high art inspires what they might consider low art in animation.
Yeah, but it's like I guess the way I try to see that is that there really isn't much of a difference because the audience that H.P. Lovecraft is inspiring is going on to make stuff that is not considered high art, but like everything's high art if it's good. Like it's I don't think there's any categorization of what's should be considered high art. I think that's nuts. That
Yeah, I guess more for marketing purposes that it helps to have those labels, but really it's all subjective.
yeah, for sure.
Cool. Well, we're coming up on an hour, and I don't want to take up much more of your day, but I don't know, anything particular you want to share? I mean, I definitely encourage people, if you have Amazon Prime, go watch Out with the Old, but you can find a bunch of George's films on his website, which is in the link below, as well as his YouTube channel. So, and my favorite one is The Wizard in the Woods. But but yeah, is there anything you want to say, or yeah?
Um, I mean, I feel like I've said a lot about. I mean, I want people to take away something in case they're aspiring to be a filmmaker or animator that's hopefully helpful. Hopefully, everything I just said about what I want people to get out of it is helpful because you should know. It doesn't have to be in words, but as long as you know what you want out of it and that it isn't something. Actually, yeah, that's a good thing to say. Make sure what you want out of it isn't something superficial. Like, I'm about to contradict everything about my film's success, but film festivals and Out with the Old and on it being on Amazon Prime, and like, if your goal is to have that sort of thing, then you're like dividing yourself, I think, because it's certainly not why I made any of my stuff. I mean, I remember after making Out with the Old, I felt I got a little bit burnt out marketing for festivals because it was it was the same amount of attention you put on a film, but just for marketing the film. And I was just so like, this isn't filmmaking. This is like the thing attached to it just to make the next one. Like this is, if your goal is that, then your passion for it will burn up pretty quickly. You should look for what it is that excites you about filmmaking, because I mean, or anything, like become a policeman to like win a award. You do it because you want to. It's the same as anything. Just identify the thing about it that you identify with, and just don't get too distracted by all the decoration, because it's so easy to do, because the industry is just so like, it's such a scrap for attention that to try and climb up that. Don't lose what you're doing it for in the process.
Yeah.
And way more important than that, make films. Like, it sounds super obvious, but somehow it's easy to forget that as well. Make them. Don't, like, you know, sometimes people look at me a bit like with their eyes wide, and when I say that I worked on Out with the Old for like, I started it in like 2016 and it only got made in 2020. They're like, you had that much like time and effort? Like, it's just because I didn't start. It's like I was mulling it over and rewriting it, and like, you just got to do it. Yeah. I mean, by the time I started, I pretty much started from scratch with the writing. Like, I don't think it really, apart from all the things I knew I didn't want it to be, it really didn't benefit from all that previous time. You just got to make it.
Okay.
There's literally nothing in the world stopping you from just making stuff. I want to emphasize the phrase duct tape filmmaking, whether it's stop motion or live action or CG or hand drawn, just like whatever you have, make a story that works within those limitations. And then like The Avengers is a giant movie with a bunch of special effects and is designed within those limitations to be this giant superhero movie. But your film can literally have just as much impact as that if it's designed within the limitations. Yeah. If you're trying to make a superhero film with paper cutout figures on your desk, it might not work as well as The Avengers. But if you make a story that's like meant to be that way, like The Hungry Caterpillar, and then you make a paper cutout animated film, like that's not worse than The Avengers because of the budget. The story is designed to, I mean, I'm massively repeating what I said earlier now, but just the more you make, the more you'll understand the relationship between everything. And you've just got to do it. Yeah. You can't find out what your calling is or how to do it or any of these. I mean, all the tips I've given are far less valuable than going and actually making a film. Go do it right away as soon as this is done.
Awesome. That is that's the perfect advice to end on. So yeah, go do it, guys. Go make your films. And I want to say thank you, George, for taking the time today. Really enjoyed talking with you. Thank you so much for sharing your thought process and giving a lot of thoughtful answers, which again emphasizes my point that a lot of thinking and energy and heart goes into animation than people think. And I think you just proved that entirely. So.
Oh, thank you so much. And yeah, it's been so good talking to you as well. Thank you for having me on. No problem. So thank you guys. Go support and subscribe to George's channel. If you ever need him to make something for you, hit him up. And I will see you all in the next video.